Hey team, welcome to the show. Hopefully this is showing. I'll just get 100% confirmation that of course it is before we kind of get rolling. Once we've got confirmation, we're going to be into it. Okay, looks like it's good to go. Yeah, there we go. Awesome. Okay, fantastic. Hey,
Yeah.
first of all, thank you very much for coming through and joining us tonight. This is obviously a live Q&A session that we're going to be going through and doing. We'll be going through and doing, addressing a bunch of different things, first aid related, specifically to the disaster preparation group. Just to give you guys a bit of a heads up, we will be going through, and this is probably going to be a little bit of a surprise. As we go through, we will be offering a bulk buy discount if the group wants to do that. More details to follow about that in the comments section of the live chat, or sorry, the Facebook live chat. There should be a form to fill out if you're interested in that, and also the opportunity to come through and train with us as well. So yeah, hello Sarah. So basically, before we get rolling into it, I thought we'd probably just be best to go through and do some introductions and let you guys know basically where we come from, what we do, and probably the reason why we're sitting here, giving you guys a bit of a heads up around first aid. So my name's Simon. I'm the founder of PracMed NZ. Basically, former soldier in New Zealand Defence Force and private military contractor as well. I spent about 15 years in total doing that. Finished up after approximately 7 years deployed. Some very, very interesting experiences. Definitely figured out what works and what doesn't at the pre-hospital trauma care, especially with regards to injuries on the X and the immediate care onto the next chain of survival. I've been working in the industry, taking care of first aid courses and doing various other training bits and pieces here and there for around the last 5 years or so, 4 or 5 years. Been back in NZ. Yeah, a lot of time overseas, a lot of real world experience, and it's just been fantastic being able to pass on that message. The reason why we started PracMed is very, very simple. We came through, obviously had some massive kind of issues with teaching first aid out of other outfits, realizing it just simply wasn't fit for purpose. When you've been there, done that, and realized what works and what doesn't work, it's very, very hard to go back and kind of accept or teach people the incorrect thing. The standard which walks past is the standard you accept. It's really that simple. Anyway, that's enough out of me. We have another incredible talent here tonight as well. And he has certainly got a resume on him as well. So he'll be able to add in and certainly answer a lot of questions as well. Steve, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, g'day team. So I'm Steve, or Steve-O. I also am an ex-soldier. I did about, crikey, I think maybe now 8 years or so in the army, and I was a medic. I was a medic during that time. While I was in, I did a trip to East Timor, and I did a trip to Afghanistan, and I did a bit of a yippee trip up into the Pacific to help out with some training and all that jazz up there in the Pacific. So I've seen a few things around the trips in the military setting, and a few different type of places where health and medical facilities are less than ideal, and the resources can be kind of limited. After I left the army, I moved to Australia, where healthcare is pretty good over there, and I did training as a nurse. So now I'm a nurse as well. But to follow on with that, I also have done some time in the private sector as a private security, and I was working in the Horn of Africa and Somalia over there doing that. So that's sometimes it can be pretty dire circumstances about the healthcare that's available. But I think with that sort of pedigree, that sort of experience, I've got a bit of an insight to, on the X, like, people that are really injured right now, life-saving. You don't do it right, people are going to die. And then also the prolonged field care, the prolonged stuff, the longer time, from point of injury into hospital care, and then beyond. And hopefully, that sort of experience can pass on some knowledge to you guys. So, hopefully tonight we get a bit of information out to you guys, and we're excited to hear some questions, get some feedback, and see what sort of questions we can answer for you, pass on some knowledge.
110%. Cheers for that, Steve. Like I said, the guy's an absolute wealth of knowledge, certainly more qualified in particular, the extended care side of the house, prolonged field care side of the house. I sit there and listen to some of the stuff he's got to say. I'm like, wow, man, I've got some learning to do. Team, before we roll on any further, I'd just like to go ahead and encourage you guys, if you have any questions at all, please don't be afraid to go ahead and ask. This session, we're here for you. It's about learning, and that's really important. So just shoot them through, and we'll answer as many as we can. But let's make sure we kind of get into the nitty gritty and get you guys questions answered. Just a bit of a shout out as well to Shana and Marty Linton, of course. They're the ones who facilitated this. They've been through a couple of our training packages already. There's another admin online as well. Sorry, I didn't write the name down before. I should have. Writes very similarly to Marty's kind of post. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a proxy or whatever else. But yeah, we'll see. Whatever. Thank you to the admins. Thank you to the staff going through and obviously supporting that. So. Yeah, go ahead and obviously jump in on that. So basically, we'll get stuck into the questions pretty quickly, and we'll just go through as we go. Again, jump into the comments. Let us know what's up. If you have any queries beyond what we've gone through, don't hesitate to just ask. So the first question we've got. Can you see that there in front of you, Steve, as well?
Yeah, I can see some of it, mate. I've got I can see, the comment here from Sarah. We can see some of the stuff you've got. We've done a bit of prep work and we've copied and pasted some of the things there. So we've got a few things to go through. But please keep on firing them. And if anything comes up, any new topics, anything you've been thinking about that's really sort of grinding your gears and you want to find out some more information about it, keep chucking them in.
100%. So we're going to start off with the first question now. And that is, of course, in a heavy arterial or venous bleeding situation where there is no medical support available for at least a few hours or even days, if at all, what do you recommend after applying direct pressure, elevating and applying a tourniquet? And is there any difference in treating a child versus an adult bleeder? So I think the best way to do this is probably break it down, first of all, with regards to, obviously, there's a lot of variables. So this is quite a subjective question. So I'll go ahead and just we'll look at this from the perspective of how we go through in controlled bleeding. That's very, very important. So basically, you can break it down in general context into 3 different regions within the body. Limbs, that's pretty self-explanatory. Junctions, where we can't obviously use tourniquets, and that's where the limbs and, of course, the neck meets the thorax of the body. And then penetrating chest trauma as well. Beyond that, when we're dealing with things like cranial trauma, where we have significant penetrating or blunt force trauma to the head, etc., that's usually pretty definitive pretty quickly. So these are the regions that we largely focus on with regards to hemorrhage control, as the question is. So with that, obviously, with limbs, it's a tourniquet. If you've got a uncontrolled bleed from an arterial passage, or even if there's a lot of tissue damage and we can't gain proper compression down onto the limb for whatever reason, stop the bleed, apply that arterial tourniquet. When we look at that, Steve, from your perspective, how long are we talking about going through and having one applied, survival of the limb, and of course survival of the actual patient? I think we need to understand about this is that if we have that much trauma, whether it be gunshot wound, whether it be earthquake, crush injury, no matter what it is, there's always going to be a kind of timeline on that. And again, this is quite subjective. So in general terms, what do you think? Like if we apply a tourniquet to somebody's leg, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so there's it's kind of a case of where you run into a situation where if you need that tourniquet, so if you need to put a tourniquet on, the wound is so severe you can't control that bleeding. If you don't put a tourniquet on, the patient is going to die 100%. All the evidence shows that. If you need a tourniquet, you don't put it on, your patient's going to die. And then if you make that decision to put a tourniquet on, great, 100%, go for it. Happy days. Now the query comes, how long can you leave it on for? Well, ideally, in a best case situation, you do want to convert the tourniquet into a pressure dressing, into a bandage. The way a tourniquet works, what it does, it gets your limb, makes it from this big down to this big. It squeezes all those blood vessels off, cuts off that blood supply. And when you cut off that blood supply, you're affecting all the tissue below the tourniquet. So ideally, you want to get that tourniquet off ASAP. But you need to plan. Do you have the resources? Do you have whatever you need for the next step after that? Because if you don't, you take that tourniquet off, your patient's going to die. if you don't have the next part of it, if you haven't prepared some bandages, gauze, all that other jazz you need to manage that wound long term, then you're just in a world of crap. So your best bet is to put a tourniquet on and leave it on. Evacuate, get to hospital. If there's, say there's an earthquake. I live in the Wellington region. If the Wellington region is all collapsed, the hospitals, I like to say heart hospitals, a bit controversial at the moment, but the hospitals will be back up and running some form to some degree to provide life and limb saving care. So if you can get that tourniquet on and evacuate from wherever you are, wherever the situations occur to you, get that patient to care, then that's going to be the best situation for you. There's some evidence I read back in the day when I was a soldier. We had to do some competency stuff every year, and part of that was about analyzing research. And even back then, there was evidence saying about Israeli soldiers that had tourniquets on for over 18 hours. They've been injured, tourniquet on. 18 hours later, the guy gets to hospital, gets surgery, gets a tourniquet taken off, and all he ends up with is some pins and needles and tingling below the wound site that ends up going away with rehab. So it is life over limb, like I said there. But the reality is, if you can get that tourniquet on, bleeding control, and then you have the equipment and the training to convert it to a pressure bandage, then you should do so. But it's kind of a time frame thing. If you can get to higher aid, do that. If it's a long term day, then you might start looking converting it.
Definitely, I think that answers it really, really well. And when it comes to children, when we're looking now, I'll address this really quickly. Absolutely, the way that children's bodies react, or rather don't react, to obviously massive blood loss is certainly something that we need to be aware of. When we're dealing with children, when they're losing blood, we basically, in general sense, we have three different stages of shock that we go into. Stage one is anything up to around a 15% total body volume of blood. Stage two, up to around about from 15% up to around about 30, max 40. And then anything over 30 to 40% is irreversible or stage three shock. You're going to die. There's nothing we can do about that, in particular pre-hospital. The problem with children is that they kind of scale a little differently. So in particular with these signs and symptoms, when you look at them, they can lose up to around about 20 to 25% total body volume without going through and displaying, any of the signs and symptoms that you generally see with hypovolemic shock. Hypo, low, volemic, volume of blood, shock, and that's basically a coin term which is used a lot. And just to explain that very briefly, the definition is essentially an inability to perfuse or supply oxygenated blood through to tissues at a cellular level. So it's really important to be very aggressive with the treatment when it comes to kids. We can't allow them to bleed. Just to expand on what Steve said before as well, if we're going to go through, particularly if we have one of our major blood vessels burst, say just for instance, the femoral artery obviously runs on the inside of the femur or the upper portion of your leg. If that is compromised, then even if we go through and convert the tourniquet, go through and put a pressure dressing on, we really are not going to maintain proper function of that limb for very long. The blood flow to the limb is going to be reduced significantly. Then we're going to be dealing with obviously the reduced pressure through which pushes the blood, oxygenated blood through the tissues and moves it back through to the venous system, of course, returning back to the heart and lungs, which recycles as arterial blood. If we don't have the pressure, obviously that blood can become acidotic, and that just is going to wreak all sorts of problems, long term. Also, Steve, I think we were talking about this before as well. Wound care. When going through and packing the wound and long term, what's your kind of experience around that, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, the other big one to deal with. So if you're putting a tourniquet on, you're dealing with a pretty decent wound, so that's a lot of tissue damage. And if you've got a large artery, a large blood vessel which is damaged there, all the red stuff's coming out. And that blood is quite important. It doesn't just, it carries your oxygen, it carries all your nutrients, it carries all that other good stuff that you need. And in this sort of situation, you're going to have impaired wound healing, right? So you've got this injury, you've got this, insult, this injury to the tissue, and you put a tourniquet on, great, the person's alive now. And then you've got the resources, you've got the training, you've got the education to convert that tourniquet into a pressure dressing with the bandage on top of it. And now you need to think about, how am I going to promote wound healing? Do you have antibiotics to manage that wound? Do you have proper wound care? Because you can't just leave that packing in there and, oh, now happy days, we're done. If you find yourself in that situation where, say Wellington and Hutt hospitals have completely fallen over and it's the end of the world, proper worst case scenario, then, without good wound care, that you're gonna die. You're gonna die because you can't heal that wound with impaired blood flow. Your resources are already limited. You're working from a deficit. You may not have clean running water. You may not have the betadine or iodine, whatever you need to clean up those bugs. You do not have antibiotics. You've got a large open gaping wound that you've got no way to fix. You say they've got a lot of tissue loss. You can't suture all this together, leave a big hole at the bottom and hope for the best, and you're going to trap all that infection in there. It's just a recipe for disaster. It's unfortunate reality.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. I think what people need to understand as well, it doesn't matter whether it's a crush injury, which is blunt force crushing mechanism, or whether it's ballistic trauma, particularly high velocity, when you're dealing with any centerfire rifle cartridge, basically, you're always going to have a portion of tissue which is simply going to die around where the gunshot wound has occurred. And of course, the crush injury is self-explanatory. If it's crushed that badly, and somebody's legs are meat patties, you may stop the bleed. That's great. But the tissues, at a cellular level is so destroyed, there's no way it's ever going to recover. And again, with gunshot wounds, there's going to be a portion. There's a lot of variables which jump in on that. Caliber, the projectile weight and obviously diameter, the amount of kinetic energy that's going to deliver into the limb, the amount of tissue displacement you got going on, distance. There's just so many different things. But when we're dealing with that, that has to be cut away. So it's not like you just, go and have a perfect little gunshot wound and then come out the end and think it's great. Plus, we've got exit wound as well, and that's another thing we've just got to deal with. I've just seen in here as well. There's a comment in here from Daryl, and it does mention, please explain, of course, the reasons for using a quality purpose-made tourniquet rather than trying to improvise. Now, there's two parts to this. The first one is, of course, yes, we do want to make sure that we've got a quality purpose-built tourniquet. We know for a fact that trying to improvise just simply fails. If you're dealing with a massive bleed, trying to go through and get the actual limb occlusive pressure that you require, particularly on upper leg or even mid-thigh, whatever, can just be an absolute nightmare. When it comes to tourniquets, it's a purpose-made item which is going to be there for you. If you carry it, it's going to be there for you. It's an insurance policy is what it is. Whereas if you're trying to improvise, running around the kitchen, grabbing tea towels, wooden spoons, all sorts of crazy stuff like this, not only will that probably fail in terms of occluding the limb, but on top of that, when you're twisting the actual the wooden spoon or whatever you've used as a windlass, it's going to suck the person's skin tissue in and all that. And I mean, pain is not a consideration when we apply tourniquets, but you're going to get a lot more resistant. Plus, how are you going to secure the damn thing?
How are you going to secure it? Yep.
Think about. The second part of that, and Steve, you just touched on it brilliantly. It kind of reminded me a little bit of this. When we're dealing with tourniquets, it's really important to understand there's a whole bunch of different flavors out there. But whatever you do, make sure that you obviously use a COTC approved tourniquet. What that is Council of Tactical Combat Casualty Care. They spend X amount of $100 million every year, or whatever their budget is, to go through and research this stuff to make sure that soldiers within, obviously, US forces, regular special operations, reserves, homeland security, etc., have the very best equipment that they can possibly use to ensure that they obviously don't succumb to preventable death. So the two that we recommend is, of course, the Special Operations 5 tourniquet. This is one that I certainly favor these days. It is a brilliant and very kind of slim, low-profile tourniquet. It does not rely on anything except for, obviously, the belt itself and, of course, a little buckle at the top, which is not affected by blood, sand, mud, etc., if you're dealing with that kind of stuff. The other one that we do have as well, and this is the kind of one that I was kind of favoring back in the day and have much more exposure to because the soft is much newer, is the Cat Tourniquet Gen 7. It's a single route buckle. It does have Velcro as a securing thing, and the actual windlass, the occlusive band is only around about an inch wide. So compared to the soft, which is a true 1.5 inch band, the difference in terms of pain scale isn't even close. The soft 5 is absolutely dominant in that sense, and that's because it uses extra 50% material to go through and compress that wound channel, compress that limb to prevent blood escaping. The more mass you have across there, the less pressure obviously is going to go directly down onto the actual nerves, fascia, muscle, fat, skin, etc. So that's quite important. I think they've nailed it with 1.5 inch as well. Personally, there's a compromise there with obviously getting a high enough above the wound channel itself and or the amputated limb, and also going through and providing a less painful ride. And that is a part of this. If you've been around people who have been tourniqueted, it's extremely painful. It's extremely painful. So, from this Facebook user is a soft T, latest gen, still a cat killer? Yes, absolutely. The cat is a fantastic tourniquet. Don't let me think, like, if you carry cats, they're a great bit of kit. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that personally, I think the soft is a better option. Medicine advances, tech advances, and TechMed Solutions has done an amazing job. Just with that, okay. Terrell Dixon, Roger that. Dina wants to inflict pain on me. Okay, well, I don't know, man.
That might be for a different night discussion.
Yeah. Just on that as well, just the other day, if you've already followed PracMed on Instagram or the book, you may have seen a story that I put up. I jumped on TradeMe, went through, had a look, just out of curiosity, typed in tourniquet, and there was 18 tourniquets on TradeMe, and 17 of them were non-approved or counterfeit ones, wish.com bullshit tourniquets. Those will not help you. We have tested these extensively. I know people in Ukraine at the moment, and there's a lot of these things flooding into Ukraine, and people are coming in literally bleeding out and bled out, or have completely lost all ability to obviously live, because they've had up to 2-3 of these tourniquets applied, and they simply don't work. They are not, obviously, they have no kind of certification process, no quality control. They're just pieces of shit, basically. Long story short. So my advice on that is kind of avoid that stuff. Even if you already have a tourniquet, send us a photo through Instagram or Facebook or whatever else. I'll go through and have a look, and obviously kind of get onto that and make sure that we can go through and look at that. Just one last one as well. I know I'm kind of rambling about TQs, but these things, these definitely work on smaller limbs as well. They have a material backing, and you can go through and really get a really small circumference of limb into the actual tourniquet itself, and still have good pressure on that. If we're looking at having to tourniquet a child, obviously, that's a big decision to make. If the kid's under 3 or 4 years old, has relatively kind of small limbs, we can get away with other kind of methods, but honestly, just use the tourniquet. It's what it's for. It's fit for purpose. Just goes hard. So, you got anything else to add on tourniquet, Steve? I've been sitting there kind of rambling about it.
I just want just a couple of points here. So I know that there was on that discussion of the soft T versus the cat, both gold standard, both premium creme de la creme products. For me, my preference is the cat for myself, just for myself, because that's what I've trained with. That's what I'm used to. That's what I had on my armor overseas. And the soft T I found was very good to put on other people, but that was my experience was primarily with the previous generation. That was very hard to pull tight on your own limb. So the cat I was a big fan of the cat. When you only got one arm, and then if you've got two hands, you can hold it tight and pull the soft T. But I know there was a post. This sort of topic's been smashed out the gate by Big Daddy Fisher, and his main take home point from the Church of Evidence-Based Medicine is just train with whatever one you've got.
Sure.
Yeah, if you've got a cat, great, train with it, be an expert with it. If you've got a soft T, train with it, be an expert with it. Both of them are great. Do not use a mechanic zip tie. We've had a comment come up there I saw pop up. So there, believe it or not, there was a commercial grade tourniquet that was being sold for a while. That basically was a zip tie that was brightly colored. And I saw some pictures of people, they were like trying to go on about how great they were. They were shooting them with the shotgun, and they're like, oh, look, it's still not failing. Or, it's got these mechanical zip ties, and you just cannot get enough pressure. You can't. It's just not going to happen. The same, the other one, the swear word amongst the tactical medical community is the rat. The rat's TQ. Oh, awful. Again,
here we go.
Awful.
Spin up now.
Yeah, mate, just no, don't even go there. But yeah, so not sure it was there, but the comment there about the mechanics zip tight is not going to work. Just don't do it. Buy a proper COTC tourniquet from a reputable seller like Pragmed. You know, if you're buying a tourniquet, so after we finish our spiel, if you want to go out and buy one, you don't have to buy it from Pragmed if you don't want to. You should, but you don't have to. But my kind of take home, I say in my courses, is if you spend less than $50, it's fake.
100%.
Yeah. If you spend less than $50, it's fake. It's AliExpress.
And that's absolutely, man. And that's another thing. The soft tea is definitely more cost kind of friendly. So there's a question which has just popped up about how much strength do you need? Man, I have had the youngest person I've had put a tourniquet on me was probably, I think, about a 7-year-old. No, it was 6 or 7, I think, and that was not long ago. So what assists you with that is the Windlass here. You can see, has obviously handles handle place to put your hand either side. All you got to do is grab either end and kind of rip it on. Expect people to obviously, even people who look really bad off and stuff like that, provide a little bit of resistance, especially as it kind of goes on. But you need to tighten that thing until the bleeding stops. So one thing that I heard absolutely ridiculous come through kind of semi-recently was somebody told a class previous to obviously us turning up and running something was that you needed to tighten until fat cells start popping. Now that is probably the stupidest thing I've just about ever heard. That's ridiculous. I've never heard adipose tissue pop. Steve, you heard adipose tissue popping?
No,
you heard it.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so there it is. So Daryl's just piped back up. Daryl. Obviously 9-year-old applying tourniquet. That's great. So there is a lot of fake tourniquets rolling around. Just be aware of that. Go through. Try and avoid those things. And seriously, they don't work. I know it kind of sucks being told that, especially if you've already bought something. But there is some nefarious people out there who don't really give a shit about your life or anything like that. So obviously, that's something we need to kind of manage. So there it is. Anyway, we better move on to the next question because we've almost spent bloody 20 minutes talking tourniquets.
But they are important.
And we're going to spend 20 hours talking tourniquets. But anyway, let's get into it. Question, here are we? Okay, so next one we've got here. How do you manage bone breaks if there's no medical support available? And so this is quite an interesting question. When it comes to fractures, I guess there's a lack of context here. So we're going to start at the start. You know, if we have a fracture and there is med support available, if there's no medical support available, rather, is the question, then you're going to have to make a hard decision because at the end of the day, depending which bone it is, we can't just leave somebody sitting there. So it's very, very important to go through and support the bone as such. Just running through, obviously, what I do if I'm going to go through and support somebody's fractured limb or even dislocated limb, is first of all, obviously, we want to check, make sure there's no massive bleeding, particularly if it is something like a open fracture. If the femur's poking through, we're going to have a hell of a time there. My recommendation for anything like that is get trained with things like traction splints. That is going to be a huge call to make, though, to go through and apply traction splint, which essentially stretches the bone out. Say if it's broken like so, it stretches it back out and obviously supplies rigid support to it. If you're going to do that without pain relief, you better have some people around to hold that person down and basically bite the belt and expect them, to obviously kick off and make some noise. That is like a last resort. But if we're going through, make sure there's no massive bleeding for a start. If it is, treat it as a bleed. That's very important to look at. Take your time, slow down, look at the injury. Obviously, if we're dealing with, other, lower limb injuries and whatnot, or even upper arm injuries, we need to think about securing above and below, and obviously making sure the limb is obviously immobile as possible. When we do this, before we go through and obviously split the limb, it's really important to check and find pulse points or compare the limbs, make sure they're comparable, because as we go through and split the limb, if there's a shift as we're moving that person's limb onto a splint or into a splinting situation, a number of things can happen. Obviously, if you have to actually manipulate the limb back around, that can cause circulatory issues or compromised vascular structure. And if you've got a closed fracture, same thing can basically happen. So we need to make sure we find a pulse point. The easiest ones to do are obviously the radial pulse, which is on the inside of the radius bone. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. Good luck with the next one. And for lower limbs, feet out. So, uh, so for the next one, we'll go through and we find the pedal pulse. You can use that. That's a really good one to go through, find and use. Top tip there, especially for the pedal pulse, go through, use a permanent marker, mark the spot so
Yep,
you don't have to go
100%.
through it and kind of, worry about trying to find it, especially if you're on the move or whatever else. That's just a real quick reference guide. Always look at comparisons, left versus right, etc. And there's just one last thing as well. This has been a bit of a discussion topic kind of recently. If we're dealing with fractured femur and it's a closed fracture, we need to also remember that we're dealing with something where there's potential for massive internal hemorrhage in the quad compartment. You can lose up to around about 3 liters from that. That's going to be very significant and obviously impact your ability to survive a lot. So don't be afraid as well preemptively to apply a tourniquet to the limb, obviously above the fracture site, and go through. And there's nothing wrong with tightening that. Just remember, just because the blood is not inside the body anymore, or just because the blood is inside the body, doesn't mean it's in circulation. So if we're losing blood into our quad compartment, we need to get that squared away. So yeah, anything to add on top of that in terms of fractures, Steve?
Yeah. So like I think like someone's just said, if it's truly end of the world situation and you've got an open fracture, then you're basically in a world of shit. And what can you really do? Not really much. You need to get the modern medicine. I mean, if you've got if I broke my arm and I've got a bone sticking out, or two bones maybe here sticking out of my arm, bush medicine's not going to fix that. If I correct that, pull it out, those bones go inside the skin. Now I've got a huge infection that I've got to try and manage. And if you don't have antibiotics, then you're just in a world of shit there. I mean, that's just reality, unfortunately. What can you do if you've got a broken limb that's a closed fracture, it's end of the world situation, or you've got a long transport? You can make the patient comfortable. I mean, say one that we see quite a lot, especially in Wellington over the weekend and during school hours, kids, they fall over, put their hands out, and they break these two bones here, the radius and ulnar and the forearm, and it's stepped, right? So here's your forearm, and it's stepped, and then the wrist is kind of up like that. So it's a bend here in the middle of the forearm that's not supposed to be there. And what can you do for that? You could try to relocate it. It's going to hurt. It's going to absolutely ping. So someone's going to have to hold that person down. You're going to crunch it back into place. Is it aligned properly? Who knows? You don't have an X-ray machine. You can't really tell. Are you going to have impaired, neurological function, neurovascular function below the break? Probably. So it's kind of a case of, you must have seen this overseas, Simon, all these little kids and all these people in these other countries who have got extra joints because they've had a broken limb without being able to get to care. Well, an adult, probably in their 40s in East Timor, who had broken their ankle as a kid, and they spent their whole life with their foot sort of turned in because there's no option. So they spent their whole life walking on the two ends of the bones, their tib fib, because there was no aid, and that's the reality. If you don't have modern med, then you're in the shit.
Yeah, and I mean that's absolutely incredible as well. You go through and look at that, and when you've got step fractures, especially of radius ulnar and whatnot, and dislocations of ankles and stuff like that, that's kind of where we see a lot of circulatory compromise. If the bone is completely fractured and folded, for example, heel touching the back of a calf muscle, tib fib sticking through the shin or whatever else. I've seen a couple of cases like that where there's still proper circulation. There's no actual real requirement to move it back into place. This is because this is in NZ or wherever else, and we have medical help on the way and so on and so forth. So go through, support the limb. Obviously, this is not something that we want to do lightly. This is something which does take training. Again, this may seem like a bit of a plug. We do want to go through and learn how to do that properly, and we go through everything. The main kind of point I want to push here is that, unless you're dealing with a femoral fracture, of course, pelvic fractures are massively troublesome as well. That's a whole other kettle of fish, though, and I don't want to kind of go down that rabbit's hole at this point. But if we're dealing with a fracture, you've got time. There's no need to rush in and go crazy with it and start, just doing your thing. slow down like every kind of portion of med, make a plan and execute it. That is just so important to go through and do that. But yeah, basically make sure you've got those kind of things. I can't see who it is here in the comments. Somebody's gone through and said limb baselines, big guy. Yeah, completely agree with that. I'm going to take a wild guess and probably say that's Craig. Is the way he kind of speaks. So yeah, whatever. Yeah, sweet. So, okay, if shit hit the fan, there's a comment here. I'm just going to have a look at this one real quick. If shit hit the fan, we really must be more cautious in what we do because we won't be able to access medical help. It seems people need to learn to live within our limits. Look, I totally agree with that. This is something that me and Steve have talked about before. And I think what it comes down to is going through and understanding that without modern medicine, you're in deep shit if you get really, really badly injured, especially if you're injured and there's major vascular compromise. So definitely do that. I know this is obviously a preppers group. There's going to be various communities, various groups kind of forming and stuff like that. Even if you have a surgeon within your group, he will not have access. Well, probably doesn't have access to all the kind of knickknacks, the team that he usually has to assist him, various drugs. And even with that, I mean, you might get lucky. You might get somebody who's got himself squared away completely or whatever else, prepping wise. And that's best case. If things with that, but I mean that's apocalyptic. So case study here. Let's look at Ukraine. I know a bunch of people over there right now. They're going through doing their thing, and honestly, the reports I'm getting back, even though the country is in just absolute chaos, you're still dealing with, you've still got Role 1, 2 trauma centers very, very effectively going through and processing people who are actually survivable and not expectant going through into those. And expectant, I do mean expecting to die. So, yeah, very, very, very very kind of tough place to be. Again, have the plan. And just on that, we're going to touch on something right now. I think it's quite important to look at as well. You can be the most amazing medic in the world and stuff like that. Do all the stop the bleed and get everything under control in that respect. But what comes next is actually a really, really important part of med. So there's two aspects to it. First of all, is management hypothermia. Steve, why is it so important to manage hypothermia in a traumatic patient? Or
if you get cold, your blood can't clot.
There it is. Easy.
That's it.
Every degree
no warmth, no blood clots. You can't stop bleeding and you die. That's it.
Yeah. So that's it. Cold blood doesn't clot. Every degree of temperature, core temperature, you lose 15% or roundabouts the ability to clot. As your body kind of decreases in that core temperature, obviously this starts off a bit of a triad. Do you want to just elaborate on that a little bit more, Steve, as well? The lethal triad.
Yeah. So what we got, we talked about this end of the world situation. If you find yourself with a major trauma, right? So you can stop the bleeding. Great. You've ticked off box number 1. Now, what you need to do is try and help that patient get better. And that's where you're going to run into trouble. I mean, like the long-term complications of that, the wound healing, you've got impaired nutrition because you don't have the right food. You don't have wound cleaning equipment. You don't have antibiotics. You don't have all the other supplies you need. So you're going to have a patient who's going to be a burden. And how are you going to try and fix that? That's the key. That's what needs to be thought about. I mean, how are you going to do the next steps? And then part of that, once you manage that first point of injury, that person now alive, because you've interfered with what's called the lethal triad, right? So lethal triad is kind of a bit of the way we talk in our courses about the way people die. So you got one of the points of the triangle, hypothermia. Cold blood doesn't clot. You get cold, your blood can't clot, you can't stop bleeding, you just die. Your blood just can't stop coming out of you. The other part of it, coagulopathy, that's your impaired function of your blood being able to clot. And when you have that is happening all through the body, then your transport of oxygen and nutrients, everything through your body is just impaired. So your organs can't function. You end up with multi-organ dysfunction syndrome, and then you start to die from that. And the third part of it is acidosis. Now, all your blood is outside your body. It's not transporting oxygen around to your body anymore, and your cells need to do their normal function, and they need oxygen for that. They don't have oxygen. They still carry out those functions, but they produce acid. And acidosis worsens the hypothermia, which worsens the coagulopathy, and round and around and around until you die. And we need to just interfere with one part of that. Coagulopathy. Do we have fresh whole blood to give to our patients? No. Acidosis. Do we have the drugs to counter that? No. Hypothermia. What can we do there? A survival blanket. Get them out of their cold gears, wrap them up, keep them nice and warm, and you've stopped that lethal triad. That's one thing you can do, to stop a person dying, and then you can help them on that best path to progress to get better in the end.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think you've absolutely nailed it. When those clotting factors decrease, it basically just bounces these 3 points. Hypothermia, coagulopathy, metacidosis. They bounce off each other, and you just basically you will never get any warmer. At this point, you need obviously surgical attention. So it's about going through, obviously, managing a massive bleed initially, then getting on top of getting rid of all the wet clothing. It doesn't matter whether it's blood, whether it's rain, mud, whatever else, that needs to come off. That person needs to go into a blanket and mitigate the different aspects of how obviously hypothermia comes on from an environmental perspective. But it's very, very important to do that. Again, emergency blanket, blizzard bag. There's a new one that we've got kind of coming out, the TSG Kingfisher, which performed incredibly well in Icarus, which is 22 SAS Arctic Warfare Training and Testing Facility. Absolutely incredible piece of equipment. So that's going to be coming out. Probably a little bit extra for most people to go through and just have something like that lying around. But the blizzard bag is just a fantastic option. You need to supplement with that, protect the person's base from obviously transitioning or allowing energy transfer from the body through into the ground as well. So very important.
I want to just clarify one other point before we move on, mate. We've talked a lot about hypothermia. I just want to clarify. Hypothermia we're talking about in this case is trauma-induced hypothermia. It's you have hypothermia because you've lost blood. We had this situation. So quite a few of the places that me and Simon have been are pretty warm. Africa generally is quite a warm place. Afghanistan, in one half of the year at least, is very warm. Iraq, all those places are very warm places. But people still die of traumatic hypothermia in those places because all your blood is what carries your body, your temperature. It keeps you nice and warm. It transports that warmth around you. If all your warmth conducting fluid is on the ground, then you're going to get cold. You're going to get cold. So hypothermia, we're talking about trauma-induced hypothermia. It's not just, it's a cold, wet day outside here in the Wellington region, and you're going to get hypothermia from that. It's that trauma-induced hypothermia. You lose blood, you get cold. So it needs to be stopped by reducing the blood loss. That's step one. You need to stop all the blood coming out, keep it inside the patient, and then keep them warm from there. It's different from environmental hypothermia, where you run out of sugar and you stop shivering and you're outside doing a week walk or whatever. That's similar but different. So it's quite important just to think about the two differences there. One's from blood loss, one's from a cold environment.
Definitely. Just to tap in and kind of jump in on that, and we will answer this question next as well, guys. In terms of going through, I actually read some material earlier this evening around hypothermia. I found a new article on that. Apparently, the coldest anybody has been from obviously environmental hypothermia and been resuscitated successfully was 13 degrees Celsius. Normal core temperature, and you said, crazy, eh? 35.5 to 37.5 is normal core temperature. So there was a young girl in Sweden. She was already cold, already kind of wet, slipped, fell into a lake or something around that. It was quite a short article. I haven't found much more information on that. But the other one, the next coldest one, which is quite well documented, was a young kid, again in the UK. His core temperature was 13.7 degrees. So, yeah, very, very, very important to go through and make sure that we get on top of that. But when it comes to traumatic hypothermia, or the mechanism being trauma, blood loss, hypovolemia, the coldest anybody has ever been and survived, and this was studied through ERs, EDs, forward surgical teams and stuff like that, is 32 degrees Celsius. So you have a much lower range of obviously ability, and there is a different mechanism there, obviously, when it comes to coagulopathy and whatnot, metacidosis. But we want to get on top of that hypothermia ASAP and get that person transported. So, yeah, really, really good one. So the next question that we've got, cool, there we go. We'll just get this one from the comments. Best contents to have in an IFAC, please. Okay, very good manners for a start. Well done. So we will answer this question to the fullest extent, as we do with everything. So when it comes to IFAC, you really need to think about what you're trying to achieve with it. The way I break this down, I'm sure Steve-O will kind of echo my thoughts here. is that when it comes to first aid, it needs to be broken into two parts, essentially. Trauma, non-trauma. And that's basically it. When we're dealing with traumatic injury, the last thing you want to do, and this is something I've observed before, is people rip into a pouch or bag or whatever else, start pulling stuff out, and there's just shit going everywhere. It's just this explosion on the ground. So quite impressive to watch, absolute meltdown. When we look at what we're trying to achieve, an IFAC or individual first aid kit, it probably should be called more something around individual trauma kit or individual trauma system or something around that, because what we need to do is go through and manage what we can. Now, when we see what actually kills people in a pre-hospital environment, generally within the first 10 to 15 minutes or less, it's going to be one of two things: blood loss or not managing airway. Of course, we have things like cardiac arrest. In an austere environment, you're basically stuffed when it comes to that kind of stuff. There is outliers who have very good med support with them and stuff like that, but you're in trouble. So let's focus on trauma. What do we need to do? We need to go through, obviously, manage massive hemorrhage to limbs, and of course, moderate to minor bleeds as well to the limbs. So what do we need? Tourniquet, compression bandage. That's done and dusted. Okay, so make sure you've got a tourniquet and compression bandage. Taking a step back, though, we always need to get down to skin to be able to assess the wound. So going through having a hook knife, which is the best way, fastest way to access somebody's actual skin, is definitely something we need to be able to access first on the trauma kit. From there, we've got a tourniquet, we've got a compression bandage, control wrap, layers, 4-inch emergency, 6-inch emergency. It doesn't matter. Like Steve said before, if you know what you've got, if you're well versed in how it works, if you've practiced and trained with it, use that. Okay. Then we need to deal with junctional wounds again, where the limbs meet the body. Can't use tourniquet. It's not going to work there. We're dealing with vascular retraction, possibly, and also, of course, the tourniquet needs to be, a good few inches, above where the actual wound channel is to be effective. So we need to look at wound packing. Basically creating an overpressure within the cavity with the use of a power ball against where the major bleed is coming from to stop that. That's very important to go through and do as well. Again, the Elias bandage has wound packing gauze inside of it, all in one. Now we're looking at dealing with penetrating chest trauma. Okay, and that's where we go through and potentially use a chest seal. Again, specifics around that, if it is an open pneumothorax, i.e. air is coming in and out, maybe we don't need to seal it. Okay, so just making sure that we go through and look what we're trying to achieve. If you're working in an area or you're going to be in an area where there's things like the potential for thermal contact burn, gosh, pack, or maybe have a burn-specific portion of your med kit, whether it's the side of it, whether it's a pouch, whether it's a pocket, doesn't really matter. If you're going to be, working around an area which has any, you just think about it. I mean, there's so many that I can list, but you basically pack to go through and fit your mission. No point in just carrying shit around for the sake of it. That's where it starts. Steve, you got anything else?
No, I mean, like, just expanding on that, mate. Like if you don't do a good risk analysis, if you carry something for everything, you're going to end up with a duffel bag as an IFAS, and that's not realistic. You're going to end up hoarding around a old black roll bag full of first aid equipment. I see. Oh, here we go. I just see a point pop up in the comments here: a boo-boo kit and a trauma kit. Yes, exactly. Right here, Daryl Dixon. Now, there's some good videos online from Luca, the guy that does the videos for OOF Pro. He does a lot of med videos. And he talks about the boo-boo kit and the trauma kit and about his bags. And you need an IFAS to sort you out when you start to die. And you need a boo-boo kit to sort you out when you cut a finger or you get a splinter. And very distinctly different. And do an analysis of what's around you, what sort of situations you might be going into, and have the right kit for that. Because you don't want to carry around a duffel bag full of medical supplies. I ran into that problem when I was a young medic, carrying something for everything and thinking, oh gosh, every guy in my platoon is going to be injured. I'm going to have to do one person saving 30 blokes. It's not realistic. It's a joke. It's not going to happen. One good medic can probably look after 2 patients that are seriously unwell, and that's it. So you got to just think about that. And IFAS, it's for you. It's your own gears. You look at that: bleeding, breathing, burns, and breaks, and that's how you're going to die. The order of priority for care. So bleeding, you need a tourniquet and a compression bandage or some packing gauze. Breathing, some sort of airway management, and then a chest seal. Once you have those, everything else is kind of additional and some way to cut things open.
Yeah, definitely, man. I completely agree with that. And you'll see, obviously we do supply going through, and we do supply minor wounds kits. Honestly, things like splinter probes, tweezers. This is gonna sound this is gonna sound super sooky of me, but that is honestly some of my favorite pieces of equipment. Obviously, we don't talk about that stuff too much. It's something maybe we should. I don't know. But removing a friggin' splinter from your hand or from your foot, which is just if you're out for days or weeks or even months, the last thing you want to be doing is having some big thorn or shard of metal in you or whatever else. It just
Yeah,
sucks. Get it out. And yeah, we want to have a tool to be able to do that. Nothing worse than somebody starting to heat up the old Gerber or whatever else.
yeah. I got caught out here. I got caught out. Perfect. Great medic. Oh, amazing. I'm so good. Go up to zone one. It's windy. Guy gets a bit of grit in the eye. What am I supposed to do? Rip open one of my 1 liter bags of saline to wash it? Like, didn't have any 30 mil salines to wash the guy's eye out. Because you think about all these major big things and you don't focus on the little stuff that's just inconvenient. Like, he wasn't going to die from that. He had a little scratch on his eye, a little bit of dust in there. I could
Yeah.
flush it out. Great. Everything's been fine now. But it's just all these little bits that you don't really think about. That's what gets you sometimes.
And in the context of thing, like I mean, if you've got a group of people and there's somebody who's specifically in charge of med, that's cool. They should be carrying more advanced kind of things within their med bag. They shouldn't be carrying shit like bandages and freaking tourniquets to use on you. You carry your own shit.
Yeah.
So it's really important. You're going to have limited supplies on you, but if you're treating somebody else as well, it's really important to use their shit on them because otherwise you got nothing for you. And you're never ever going to you very seldom is somebody going to be like, oh yeah, let's go through and do real quick check of our gear and stuff, especially after something's just gone down, and notice, oh yeah, I've blown my trauma kit, or IFAC or whatever else on somebody else. They'll just carry on their merry way, and it's all good until it's not good. So really important to go through and do that. Team, just to let you know, we will put a list up within the comments here, maybe because this video I think we'll save to the page. I don't know, we'll figure that out. But we'll put it back up. We'll have a list of stuff that we recommend at least anyway for that kind of stuff. So go through, have a look at that, and obviously again, it just comes down to pack mission specific. If you don't do that, then yeah, you're going to end up like Steve in Zone One, running around the place with all sorts of shit hanging off him, and maybe stuff that's just not useful. Look, we've all
Movie
been
era, mate. Movie era.
when I start doing more elevated training, the more you know. It's almost, I guess, I wouldn't call it Dunning-Kruger effect or anything like that, but it's a place where medic is generally a fairly altruistic person. Trying to make sure that we've got our people covered. And the only thing that obviously starts chopping away at your med pack is experience. So there's two types of people in this world. There are smart people like me and Steve, or there's smarter people like you who go through and go, oh, I'm listening to these guys, what they're saying. So if you've got a group of people together or whatever else, carry your own shit. And anything that is supplementary to that, if you've got a designated medic within the team, they need to be carrying something a little bit more and obviously be trained in that kind of use as well. We've got a question here. This one's an interesting one. So this is around blood transfusions. If you've lost too much blood, is there a way you can do this in a situation where there's no medical help? Very simply, I'm going to just address this right now, and don't take this as condescending, but if you have to ask the question, then you're probably not trained in doing this. Obviously, there is out there training within certain communities, especially the special operations community, the special operations medical community, where you can do obviously person-to-person transfusion on the ground. But I mean, this is something that it's quite. I mean, it's reasonably advanced medicine. So, thoughts on that, Steve?
Yeah, it's echoing the same thing, mate. Like that is a capability that exists. Like there are kits for that, but that is super niche. That's a niche specialist thing that can be done, but that is way beyond the scope of this talk. That's the kits exist. I'll say that much. But that's a whole nother level of training and equipment, everything else that goes along with that. It can be done, but man, that's pretty advanced. What I want to say, it's pretty advanced stuff, but it's not really. You take a blood from one person, put another, but all the steps in between are it's pretty bloody advanced stuff. It's coming in pre-hospital. It's coming more and more into a military setting, but I don't think that's a realistic thing in this sort of being prepared for without. That's like, say if you're the doomsday prepper, you're the bug out prepper that builds takes over a nuclear silo and builds it out, then you might want to look at blood transfusion person to person. But for most people, for being prepared for for the grid to go down for a few days or being something like that, it's best to get trained in stopping the bleeding and wound care.
100%.
Yeah.
Just speaking of wound care as well, I just want to go through and introduce you guys to a few bits of kit. So obviously, a lot of people are pretty familiar with what is known as the emergency bandage. This is one that I've had quite a bit of exposure to, used quite a bit as well. This is the 4-inch variant. That means it's 4 inches wide, basically, but it is only a singular bandage. These go hard. These go really well. They are quite a complicated bandage to use in comparison to other regular roll bandages. And of course, the kind of newer one, which is the Elias bandage. This is the Elias here. This one works instead of using, the pressure bar, which you have to thread through and then wind back, which can leave a lot of room for error. This one just uses straight up super elasticated material, which goes through and provides a ton of pressure down onto the limb. More pressure, in fact, than the emergency bandage as such. So easier to use. Like literally anybody can use this thing. You just got to put the pad against the wound and go through and wrap it on. If there's a wound channel, guess what? This one has packing gauze inside of it. Also a cup which presses in like a pressure cup. It doesn't really work too well for using like that. That can be used for ocular injuries though, to cover the eye, and then obviously use the bandage to wrap both eyes up. And it also has a little piece of plastic inside it, which you can use as a occlusive seal for dealing with penetrating chest trauma. Or obviously a non-stick kind of pad if you're dealing with somebody who's maybe got intestines poking out, whatever else. So that's options there. We've got a new one as well, the super thin one. It's basically the Elias bandage, so super compressed wrap. Doesn't have any Velcro in it to retain it. So once you pull the packet, you've got to be careful not to let it go. But if you're looking at a very low profile kind of system, there it is. Okay, super thin. Really easy to use, but those are the bandages that I recommend. There's other gauzes out there as well. H&H, that's one we can use supplementary, and they're called S-roll gauze as well, which is awesome. Both these deploy out. S-roll is just folded back on itself, same as a Z-fold. Really, really good bits of kit. So that's what I recommend in terms of bandages. Again, they're available, and we'll put together a bit of a list for those who've kind of just joined or maybe missed the start. There's going to be a collective list at the end. So if you want to go through and get something, we will offer obviously a bulk discount. People can tap in there. What you're getting is the real deal. Okay, and that's why Cracknet obviously supplies what we do, because there is a lot of counterfeit kind of stuff out there, which is never ever going to do the job it says. So let's move on to the next kind of area. And just before we do, I just want to mention, if you are interested in higher level medical training, we're actually just finishing off and putting together a course now, or just finishing off our course, which is pre-hospital emergency care. This one obviously is floated around New Zealand. There's a lot of providers who do this stuff, but ours is going to be very different. So we're pushing the boundaries big time, as we do with everything. So if you're interested in looking at that again, go through and maybe submit the form in the comments, and we'll go through and obviously make contact with you, or square it away afterwards. Admin will be all over that. That's definitely not my forte. I'm kind of pen and paper sort of dude, knuckle dragger.
Yeah, custom education team. That's what we can do. We're dynamic. We can get around and teach you all about this wound care stuff. It wouldn't be that much of a stretch for us to try and tee up through our side, through our admin team, through your team, for me to come and give some stuff about wound care. That's a nice, easy thing to do as well. So the sky's really the limit on training. What we can deliver and what sort of training that we can get that's formalized, and training that we can suss out that's a bit more informal, specific to groups.
110%, man. Absolutely. So we've got the next question here. Do you have recommendations of books or manuals which go beyond first aid? Again, I'm just going to reference back real quick. We've got pre-hospital emergency care coming out. There's going to be some twists and surprises in it if you want to come and join on. Even if you've done a FET course before, this one's going to be quite different to obviously anything else which is provided in this country. That's for sure. So look at that. But to answer the question directly, absolutely. So some of the resources that we use, there's some really, really good ones on the social media. And Steve mentioned one before, which is obviously Andrew Fisher, who's a former 75th Ranger Regiment medic. He runs a page. We'll try and put the link on later on. He runs a page called St. Fisher's Evidence-Based Medicine, with the Church of St. Fisher's Evidence-Based Medicine. And also he has another page which he is more directly kind of involved with, which is him personally, and that's Trauma Daddy. So, kind of, take that as you will, but let him be your daddy. He's the
that guy knows his shit.
And basically what he says is essentially gospel. 75th Rangers was a unit which they basically changed the game with regards to evidence-based medicine. They were the first ones to introduce the TRIC, or Tactical Combat Casualty Care Program. They are a direct action unit who are doing nothing but basically direct action raids, and they were suffering up to around about 67% mortality rate for going through and having preventable trauma, what was assessed as preventable death by traumatic injury of 67%, and they went to zero overnight just by going through and getting the TRIC program running. So very, 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 very cool. So Trauma Daddies there, St. Fisher's Church of Evidence-Based Medicine. Other ones that you'll get, there's some really good ones. One of my buddies over in the States, Green Feet Medical, he's on the Instagram, very, very, very experienced medic who's a PJ, or pararescue jumper, incredible guy. Look, PracMed, we try and keep our lips above the water and keep you guys entertained. We put through some bits and pieces, and we've got some good stuff coming online with some new bits and pieces there as well. So very, very cool in that sense. Steve, what are your favorite resources, man?
Yeah, mate. So there is a website. There's a group, Deployed Med.
Yep.
Deployedmed.com, deployedmed.org, deployedmed.com, I think it is. That's where the American Department of Defense has put up all their manuals, or their about the TCCC. So that is like TCCC is it's focused on combat, right? It's tactical combat casualty care, all about when you're on the sharp end on a two-way range. You've got bullets coming both ways, so it's focused on that. But some of its lessons can be applied. There's some of it's like the triad and the treatment methods can be applied in a civilian setting. So Deployed Med is a good one just to read up. Another good one to look at. So this is a book that I would recommend. It's more of a guide for a kind of advanced and more in-depth understanding of the pathophys and all that sort of stuff about injuries. Is PHTLS, Pre-Hospital Trauma Life Support. Now there's a civilian version of that book and there's a military version of that book. The only difference being that the military version chucks in a bit more of the TCCC stuff, and it costs a bit more, but it's good for understanding some of the more advanced concept. It goes through all the basics from head tilt, chin lift, through to airways and all the other interesting things. So you can look at it use it as a reference guide to enhance your own knowledge. Now, it's not going to give you a license to apply those skills, but in the end of the world situation, it might give you a bit of a leg up. But yeah, PHTLS. If you look on Amazon, PHTLS book, and then it's going to pop up with a bunch of those different versions of that book. Now, do you need the latest edition? No. Can you save a few bucks and buy last year or the year before's edition? Yes. It's the changes are minimal, and the fundamentals are the same. It's just going to be those little minute tweaks so they can sell a new edition. And then and Deployed Med. Deployed Med is a great one. Deployed Med. I'll echo Simon. Green Feet. The trouble you might find is if you're looking on the socials for medical training, for medical advice, there's a lot of cowboys out there, man. The cowboys. If anybody is talking about medical training on the socials, if they pull out a tampon, if they're going to use it for anything other than feminine hygiene, just close that page straight away.
100%. Man, it's automatically I start spinning up about that. Look, I read an article on the use of tampons for gunshot wounds or treating gunshot wounds. Jump on the PracMed website. We've got a very small resource library at this point. This is about to be expanded quite massively. Just a heads up, there's Ben's page or Benji's page, Green Feet Medical. Go and check him out. He's on our Instagram, obviously. We don't follow very many people on Instagram, so just because exactly what Steve said, there's a lot of people who essentially, oh, hey, cool, I've done a stop bleed course, whatever else. I'm going to go and teach everybody about tactical medicine, whatever else. And it's just, oh God, there's some cringeworthy shit. So, yeah, absolutely great point, Steve. And those are there for everybody's use. The other one I'll just mention real quick on top of all this is the actual COTC themselves. They publish their findings every single year, any kind of updates and whatnot. So that's actually publicly accessible. You can go through as like a regular everyday person and look at that. And what I'd suggest is going through, working within your limits and doing the basics really, really well. So obviously we're not going to be doing things like cryocs or surgical airways, at a basic life support level. If you're qualified to do that, then you're probably, maybe sitting here listening to this kind of ramble. Maybe you will, but hey, look, at the end of the day, if you're qualified to do that, power to you. But there's going to be a lot of other problems that you're going to have to be dealing with if you're in the kind of disaster or shit hits fan scenario and having to do a cryoc. So, power to you. Good luck out there. There's a lot of other kind of factors involved. So we've got another question here. I'm just going through and having a look. You good, Steve?
Yep.
So, okay. So, all right. So this is quite interesting, this one. So this is from, we can't actually see very many names up here. So I'm just having a look here. This question, I can't see, it's from anonymous from our end. For infections caused by cuts or splinters that are not fully out, I always make hot water saline, salt, and soak the previously clean foot, hand, toe, finger, etc. in the solution repeatedly for over 12 to 24 hours. If there's any OS,
I'm not sure what the OS.
No. That I get cut out, clean and soak. It has worked every time to heal the infection. It is safe in the long run when you have no sterile saline solution. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Normal potable water is fine to irrigate wounds. When it comes to obviously going through and using, saline, any kind of water and stuff like that, in particular hot water or warm water, lukewarm water, etc., that actually relaxes or allows the skin tissue to be a little bit less rigid, and obviously encourages the splinter or foreign body to come up out of the wound. So if you have the luxury of being able to go through and have access to kind of hotter water and stuff like that, then that's not an issue at all. Go through and do that. That's fine. And obviously, boiling the water first, letting it cool to a temperature and be able to go through and dip your limb in it, that's going to be a better practice as well, because that, boiling it is going to hopefully kill, anything which may be lurking in there, potentially causing any kind of infection. But yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Yeah, go for it, mate. I wouldn't. Yeah, that's not going to be stuff you're going to be putting inside you, like IV therapy. But for cleaning wounds, yep, water, potable water, boiled water, a bit of salt in it to make saline. Yeah. I guess the evidence is there to support that. This is kind of like leading on to a bit of more like I've seen a couple of things about like some home remedy stuff. There is some evidence for that sort of whatever plants in that work. And if you find something that works, it's got good, strong evidence behind it, then go for it. Go for it. I'm a big fan of modern medicine. I'm not into the natural stuff as much, but there is some evidence for that side of it. But if you have the reason, it's in a grid down situation where you don't have anything. Yeah, that might be what you find. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody, Daryl, sorry, has mentioned, the tactical tampon and sanitary pad. Yeah, way to spin me up, man. I definitely don't appreciate it when, especially when you kind of get argued there with. Hey, look, I just want to go over something real quick as well. I think I looked at the Disaster Prep Facebook page, and apologies, I haven't engaged on there the last few days. They dropped a ban hammer on me for some reason, which I definitely care not to kind of repeat why. But anyway, basically, I did notice somebody was saying something about kind of natural remedies and stuff. Or there was something along those lines. So, like, to be completely upfront with that, I have no experience. There is obviously evidence kind of backing that kind of stuff, and I actually think it's awesome. I think it's very, very cool. Not being an expert in that area, and I don't think Steve is either. Maybe he is, I don't know.
Definitely not.
But I would recommend, I just want to throw a bit of a shout out to one of the other guys who does some work around this area. And he does natural medicine, also some incredible survival foraging courses and stuff like that. He has a lot of experience. He would be what I consider to be a subject matter expert within his field. And he is at New Zealand Survival School, or Academy rather, New Zealand Survival Academy. So I'll just bring that up real quick again. He's on both the Instagram and also the Facebook. So that's his page there, NZ Survival Academy. We'll try and go through It's pretty hard to see, I know. We'll try and get his link put up in there as well. Survival Academy, amazing guy. He's not always running courses, so please be patient and definitely don't pester him. But some of the and definitely don't mention my name if you pester him. But yeah, now you can all go pester him. So yeah, basically, he provides some really good information. He's got some really good resource there. There's a couple of quite cool articles written up on his thing there, and I know he's looking at becoming a lot more active running courses towards the end of this year. So even if you know a bit about bush survival, this guy, he's what I consider to be an SME. So can't recommend him enough. NZ Survival Academy. Right, do we have any other questions here?
Yeah, it's a bit of a scroll here.
Yeah, I'm just having a look there. Oh, look at that. You guys advocate. Oh, shit. It literally just came in 2 minutes ago. That's timely. Okay, good stuff. So do you advocate any bush medicines? Again, very simple. I don't know enough about this.
Don't know enough about it.
Yeah, I'm going to be going and doing one of Survival Academy's foraging courses because I just need to know more. So I can leave the hedgehogs alone and stuff like that, not eat them. Maybe I can just run around eating freaking fern shoots and stuff, but I don't know. I'm trying to have a look here as well. Okay, here we go. Can you see that one down the bottom of the chat there, bro? How do I practice stitching up deep cuts? What are essential items in first aid kits for stitching, or should we just make sure we have plenty of super glue?
Oh, yep. So, yeah. So, suturing. Gosh. And fairly advanced, but not really type of skill. If you find yourself in a situation where you're doing some suturing, be aware that you are sealing up a wound which potentially could be infected. So you are, say you've got a small cut like that, you sew up the top of it, then you're going to collect infection here. So be aware of that. You must look out for signs of infection afterwards. Is this going to be a case where we had the previous discussion about washing it out, boiled water and salty water and all that sort of carry on beforehand? Yeah, great. Go for that. But be aware, look out for signs of infections. Generally, this is pain or swelling or redness at the site, a bit of a whiffy smell, and growing, spreading red area around the wound. If you're going to do that, great. Okay. About suturing, what I would recommend, if this is something you really want to investigate and look into, this people in New Zealand, they sew up their animals, their hunting animals all the time. There's stories about people, they're out pig hunting and they get gored, they sew themselves up with a bit of number 8 wire or whatever. So it's not a technical, like really difficult skill, but you need to watch out for the signs of infection. Now, I've seen on Amazon's got lots of really great trainers for this. So if you want to go on Amazon, chuck in suture trainer kit, and it's going to come with what you need. Now, be aware there's lots of sharp, pointy bits in that, so look out for that. But there's nothing wrong with doing a bit of that. Practice suturing. You can go into if you've got a butcher that's got some sort of animal skin. Pig skin is a great analog for human skin. If you are a person who does home kill or whatever, you've got access to dead animals, then human or not human skin, animal skin, particularly pigs, is the closest analog to skin. And try to think about suturing like from the bottom of the wound up, and being aware of infection is the main one. Now, the other one, a good point there about super glue. Right, so super glue, gosh, amazing stuff. Did you know super glue originally invented for medical, and then they're like, oh gosh, this is really good for gluing bits of paper and other objects together as well, so we'll use it for that. Cyanoacrylate, yeah, great stuff. We use it in health, in the hospital, we use glue a lot. You've got a minor lack, you've got a little cut up here on your dome, just put a bit of glue on it, squeeze it shut, seal it up, happy days. It makes a nice strong scab. And there's nothing wrong with using super glue as long as you're aware of signs of infection. That's the key. So look out for that. So super glue is fine. Yep, be aware of infection. Have a look at it. You got a little cut on your finger. So you've been working in the shed or whatever. You've got a little cut on your finger. You can glue that. There'd be no harm in that.
Yeah, 100%. We just had somebody pop up here again. I can't see the names on the Facebook comments here. Staples are fast and easy way to close a lot of wounds without a heap of skill and everything Steve said. Perfect. Absolutely. And in particular, I've seen them used hunting before. I've seen people, including a family member who had major cancer surgery, brain cancer surgery, and literally was cut from ear to ear. And their head was just stapled back up after the procedure. So they are literally are a good tool out there. And sometimes we don't need to overthink these things. Suturing is a skill. Obviously, you have different gauges of needles. You have different gauges
Different
of thread.
materials. Yeah.
There's a little bit more to it than meets the eye. So it's something that we definitely want to go through and kind of get squared away. But yeah, second what Steve said. And look, if you don't have that stuff, if you don't carry super glue in your med kit or whatever else, then pushing tissue back together using a compress or a compression wrap is definitely where we kind of should be. So. Yes. Okay. So the next one we've got there, great question. Quick clot is another one that comes up. Can you expand on that? Okay. So we look at this. This is a hemostatic. I'm just going to use a broad term here. Quick clot is one of the brands of various hemostatic agents which are out there. And when we look at that, there's kind of two different. There's basically two different categories of hemostatic. You have kind of powdered or granular, and then you have impregnated. So powdered granular is pretty kind of stock standard. It is exactly what it says. It's a packet, depending on the size of it. Usually, I think 5 gram or 10 gram. You rip the top, you basically pour it into the wound, and what it's designed or supposed to do is go through and obviously clot bleeding. If you've ever seen a massive bleed, even a moderate arterial bleed, even the small ones, you've got artery across the forehead and stuff. People get those split all the time. Kickboxing, rugby league sports, accidents and stuff like that. You can just go through and compress those, and they're gonna be kind of sus. But if you try and pour a powder on there, I don't care what it is, man. It is just gonna come off. And the other problem that we deal with that is also distal thrombosis. If you're going through and pouring a powder in, if you manage to get enough of that stuff in, potentially it can be picked up and obviously transferred back through the body through the venous system. So that's obviously going to cause massive issues with regards to clots traveling. If they don't hit you, within the heart, within the lungs, causing obviously embolisms and stuff there, it's going to continue. Misses the brain, that's fine. In my experiences, what I've seen is basically generally resting in the lower left leg is where you find these things kind of travel to and cause the most problems. A lot of kind of flow down through to that area. When it hits there, obviously vascular structure gets more and more and more narrow, and eventually these clots have got to stop somewhere. When you lose a lot of those kind of smaller capillary vessels and smaller arterial pathways and passages, obviously the tissue can't get the oxygenated blood it needs and the tissue dies. So really simply, I stay away from those. When it comes to impregnated gauze, what is the main thing with any kind of packing job there, Steve?
Pressure.
And technique, 100%. Pressure and technique. If you don't have your technique down pat, it doesn't matter whether you've got the flashiest friggin' latest Celox or Quick Clot or friggin' Cheetos on or whatever you've got, whatever product you've got, it doesn't matter. If you don't know how to form a power ball or wad, go through, clear the channel, identify where the big bleed's coming from, even sticking your finger in and trying to find, if it's nighttime or whatever else, sticking your finger into that wound cavity, you can feel it against your finger, and that is a pulse. If we can find that and feel that, that's where our power ball needs to go up and against. And then it's just a case of place and replace. If you're aimlessly just stuffing some impregnated gauze into somebody's wound channel, it's not going to work the same way. It just doesn't work. So my advice, learn how to pack properly, go through, refresh regularly. There's packing trainers. We sell them. They're pretty expensive, but they're an amazing asset to go through and use. And it's something that you only get better at doing that when you go through and do more of it. So yeah, definitely. I avoid them. Look, at the end of the day, are they any more beneficial? There is limited evidence to suggest they are. What really matters is that technique. And for the price point, you're paying $65 to $80 for a roll of impregnated gauze, whereas one of these gauze here, where it's the North American Rescue S-Rolled, whether it's the H&H or whether you go through and get yourself a flat folder or AS bandage, these all have gauze in them. They're under $20, around about $20, I think. So, it just doesn't make sense. Plus, the impregnated stuff expires pretty quick. You got anything else to say on that, Steve?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to echo it again, mate. Like Daddy Fisher came out and said it's just it's no better than playing gauze as long as you have good technique. It's fairy dust. If you're relying on your fairy dust to protect you from to manage your bleeding, then you're doing the wrong thing. You should just focus on the technique. And that guy, that Green Fit Medical, that video he made about that Powerball, perfect. That changed my training, changed my teaching. It's amazing. That's a great idea.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. And I mean, that's something, I mean, it's the terminology, I think, is fantastic. I mean, it took a while to get my head around it, Powerball as such, but yeah, really, really valid point in making sure we've got good control over that piece of tissue. So yeah, very cool. Rightio, yeah, Celox hemostatic granules, stay away from those. I've seen somebody put a kind of comment in there. Just going up very quickly, having a look here. Please, can you put up a link for your Auckland training? Head through to pracmenz.com, or sorry, .co.nz.com, whatever it is, .com, I think. I should know that. And either way, just Google PracMed, you're going to be good. Go through there, have a look at our training courses upcoming. We've got stuff coming up. Just a heads up as well, if we're going to be releasing the FET course, that's going to be full on. I wouldn't advise people to go through. You want to go through and do some training before that. Of course, we run level 1 first aid course. Just make sure at minimum that you do a stop the bleed course. If you don't do that, you're going to get caught with your pants down big time. And whoever you're going through, if it's through us, great. You're going to have a massive head start on things. If it's through another provider, just make sure they're a decent, reputable provider, because your kind of typical tick and flick courses are just not going to cut the mustard. There's a reason why we exist, team. Okay, if there was no industry, if there was no problem with the industry, we wouldn't exist. I'd just work for somebody else, basically. Okay, so what have we got next? Rightio, Facebook user. Regarding infections, what antibiotics would be the top ones to get your hands on, i.e. which ones would be good to have in your kit? Okay, what say you, Steve? What do you think? Malox?
Well, gosh. So there's, yeah, so this is man, this is such a broad topic, and you must be careful in this. This is where you run into the problem of creating superbugs. Like, this is the reason MRSA exists. And there's this concept called antimicrobial stewardship. Now, it's going to be hard for me to recommend anything here, because I have a responsibility to safeguard the antibiotics that we do have and make sure that they are going to stay working. But what I would suggest, if you have some way, I don't know how you're going to do it. If you have some way to get your hands on antibiotics, then you probably want to go quite a broad spectrum. But then you run into the problem of, you're handing out antibiotics like candy, and then that bug is going to become resistant to the antibiotic. Then after it's resistant, you might as well just be eating Tic Tacs. This is a problem we had overseas. My last overseas place, the people there, the local indige, they were used to foreign aid organizations handing out tablets. If you didn't give them a tablet, you basically did nothing. Why were you even there? If you didn't give them an antibiotic, you might as well just not even showed up, because they'd be like, hand out antibiotics. I need antibiotics. You did nothing for me because I didn't have antibiotics. And that is just awful. And I, unfortunately, was part of that. We gave out just shitloads of real broad spectrum antibiotics. And I would not be surprised if the new superbug comes out of Africa just because of that. Because aid organizations thinking they're doing the right thing by making a population dependent on antibiotics. I mean, we had this problem coming in New Zealand. Oh, I've got a cold, I've got a sniffle, I better go to the doctor. Oh, he only gave me some Panadol. I need antibiotics. No, you don't need antibiotics for a cold. Unless you've got an infection, you're coughing up yellow or green phlegm, you just need Panadol, Powerade, and a rest. There's antimicrobial stewardship. That's the big one. You got to look after the few antibiotics we have left that still work. We have to protect them. So if you are looking at getting some antibiotics, you need to specifically pick the ones that are going to fit your sort of what you expect to encounter. For skin wounds, there are some generic, or there are some antibiotic classes which are better for that. For urinary tract infections, there are some antibiotics that are better for that. For eye infections, there is a specific antibiotic. So you can't just willy-nilly chuck them out. Oh, hey, I've got an infection. Here you go, some ciprofloxacin, boom. It's going to run into a big disaster, and you're going to end up with superbugs that you can't treat. A key take-home message, team, with antibiotics. If you are prescribed antibiotics, take the whole lot. Don't just take 2 or 3 doses, feel better, and stop, because any bugs that are left over, they'll become resistant to that antibiotic, and you'll get sick again. So if your doctor gives you a week-long course of antibiotics. Say, take this medication every day, 4-hourly for a week. Take it every day, 4-hourly for a week. Take the whole lot. So that there's a reason why you've been prescribed that much. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If we're talking stockpiling as well, somebody's added a comment in here which is absolutely fantastic. I think so. If we're talking shit, it's a fan, kind of gorilla med, all that kind of shit. You just need to understand that if you don't have the education behind antibiotics, and I'm certainly not up to the play with that. It's been a long time since I've done any learning with that kind of thing. We need to understand that people can obviously have reactions to antibiotics as well. So just because somebody's sick, we serve them up some antibiotics. Next minute they become even more ill or potentially have a reaction to that. That's going to be in trouble real quick. So my advice is kind of stay away from that kind of stuff, quite frankly. Look at what you can do cause and effect wise. Work within your scope. If you know what you're doing, then hey, look, power to you. But if you don't, then probably stay away from it and obviously get somebody in your community who can.
This might be a situation where the bush stuff is better for a generic sort of coverage. If there is a type of plant, I don't know enough about it.
Yeah,
if there is some sort of
protect Steve's situation professionally at the moment, and just say, hey, look, go see NZ Survival Academy, book in with them. He's absolutely amazing. Again, cause and effect wise, look, there's a lot of training out there which you can do. Med training not so much, but think martial arts, whatever else. You do like a 1-day course, 2-day course. If you think that it's going to be effective in terms of going through and really looking after yourself, you're kind of dreaming. But with regards to going through and using, same as any kind of weapon system or anything like that, you're just wasting your time. When it goes through and looking at cause and effect, things like bush survival, bushcraft, bush medicine, you can learn some incredibly good stuff. And of course, first aid, medicine, pre-hospital medicine, you can learn some amazing stuff. Look, just in the first aid context, this is backed up by our numbers. We've had 71 people who have reacted and saved 72 lives in the time we've been around. 5 of those CPR events or cardiac arrest events. All the rest, moderate to massive hemorrhage. So it kind of tells you what works and what doesn't in the real world. And we're the only company, as far as I'm aware, who keeps those statistics and that data. The reason why we do that is because when it comes to time to argue the case, to bump training for massive bleeding up, or prioritize that over, say, airway management, which it absolutely needs to be, we have the data to support us, and it's not just me whinging and carrying on about it. So, yeah, pretty important to do that. Okay, so where are we? What have we got next? Rightio. Yeah, agree totally. Blame the doctors; they're the one dishing out the anti-Bs like lollies. Yes, I think we need to be very conscious that we have amazing providers as doctors and GPs, and we have very shithouse ones as well, and then a bunch in the middle. You've got to be really, really careful about that. It's just like first aid trainers. You get some amazing first aid trainers, like Steve, and then you get some others who are at the other end of the spectrum, everybody else. So basically, very, very important to go through and obviously recognize that. If you're not happy with that, then obviously go through, get second opinion, whatever. Now, next question we've got here, tooth problems, tooth infections. Okay, I'm going to address this right now. The best thing, and this is from my own personal experience, the best thing you can do about this for tooth infections, for anything oral, is go through and just as much as you can, again, just mix warm water and a couple of salt sachets through, go through and swirl it around your mouth. Just sit there and wash it in and out. When it comes to actually the infection of the tooth itself, if you have a tooth rotting inside of your face, that's going to need to come out. And obviously that's incredibly painful if we don't have analgesia there. Look, if you rip it out in your own community, power to you. Problems associated with that, obviously fragments being left in the jaw or left inside of the tooth cavity as such, and it's just going to be problematic in that sense. So if there's an infection and cut, ulcer, whatever else, use the salt water. I found that just to be incredibly powerful at going through and getting rid of anything or helping with the healing process. But yeah, anything else to add on that, Steve?
Cloves. I don't know if it's clove oil. The cloves is a big one in dentistry. Yeah, that weird smell you might remember from the murder house when you're a kid. Cloves, and then just dental hygiene. Yeah, a brush. Actually, the blokes in Somalia, they would bloody chew on a little stick. I think it was a specific plant, a specific type of tree. I'm not 100%, but some of the oral hygiene there was absolutely horrendous, absolutely just disgusting. But some of it was just really, really shit hot. So it was a huge spectrum from those videos on Facebook where the teeth are falling out to guys with like Hollywood smiles. So they were doing something right in between. But yeah, trying to keep an eye on your teeth, try and look after them is the best thing you can do. We get patients often who come to hospital with dental pain. Dental pain, there's not really much you can do except take painkillers. If there's some sort of infection under there, you need to fix that. If the tooth is so sus that it's causing you a lot of pain and trouble, it needs to come out. That's it. You're going to have to take some strong liquor or something, or toughen up, get the Leatherman in there and rinse it out. But then you've got a whole other problem, right? It's going to bleed. Is there infection? Is it left over or anything? But yeah, teeth. But it's one of my whinges about New Zealand healthcare system. We have free healthcare, right? So, if you hurt yourself, you can come to hospital. If you can come and get treatment. But if you got dodgy teeth, you got to pay up, which is crap. But yeah, because teeth, man, that's the pain. The pain is the big one. Infection, it's got to be fixed up. Then get the teeth ripped out.
Is free dental still a thing in school?
I think for kids, yeah, for little kiddies, there is. Each hospital seems to have like a free dental clinic, but as you can imagine, it's the most popular, busiest place of the hospital every day. Opens at 8, lines out the gate. It's overwhelmed. But yeah, keep an eye on your teeth if you can. Keep them nice and clean. Look after the little peepers in there.
Super important, including like flossing and stuff like that. I mean, that's just something which is just simply people just don't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Oral hygiene is is a massively important thing.
Yeah.
And again, like quite honestly, team, in my experience, once again, 7 years deployed overseas, obviously went through a lot of different kind of very interesting situations. In a med context, though, one of the chief complaints was not so much around, massive bleeding. Yeah, dealt with that and stuff. But when we were going through and traumatic injury, but when we were going through, quite often, especially at around about the 2-week mark, when somebody would come back in, there would usually be a complaint around something which was itchy or whatever else. And it was just a lot of non-combat related stuff. A lot of this kind of stuff is really kind of easily dealt with as well. And it's just not being a grub, basically. So, yeah, make sure you've got your, there we go. Dental's free until your age of 18. So I need to print myself off fake ID or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Show the bill, mate. Right.
Yeah, definitely. So there we go. So that's a bit of a thing there as well. So other options, regular does it. Vitamin C, silver, homemade balms. Kawakawa, definitely endorse Kawakawa balm. That's amazing stuff. But yeah, again, I'm definitely not an expert in that field. So again, sounds like there's a few people who are considered experts here. For me personally, NZ Survival Academy, the guy's just an absolute weapon. Knows his stuff and very, very, very kind of dynamic in that sense. We've got another question here, and we will probably have to wrap it up kind of soonish, guys. But we'll go through and have a look at this one. Do you have any experience using the activated charcoal for possible OD or poisoning in the field? Me personally, no. Steve, activated charcoal for anything like that?
I have seen it used. Yep. Mostly in an ED situation, but the person, people. One of the most common ones that we see in hospital with overdose is paracetamol overdose, because you can buy Panadol at the supermarket, and people have, for whatever reason, they have that whatever reason that triggers them. They take an overdose of Panadol, and there is, activated charcoal can be a remedy for poisoning. For overdoses, it binds to the product if it's in your belly and it deactivates it. I'm not 100% on the science, but the way I understand it is that you have that poison inside you, the charcoal binds to it, and it inactivates it, and then it activates whatever that poison is, so you can then digest it and poo it out. So yeah. But the key with activated charcoal is it tastes like shit. It tastes like coal. So that's the hard, trying to get it down. I've seen a patient they'd taken an overdose. We said, all right, mate, here's the charcoal, drink this. They took one swig of it, and then they looked like something out of a villain out of a movie with a demon with black shit all over their face. So that's the hard thing to try to manage, is you got to try and drink coal. So if you can get it down, great. I'd suggest just chopping it back as fast as you can. But it does. There is evidence for activated charcoal. Yep, 100%. If you've got poisoning, poisoning is real specific to whatever's a poison, right? So someone's here mentioned in the comments about NAC for Panadol overdose. That's true. Do you have that in a pre-hospital setting? Do you have that in the bush? No. You need to come to hospital for that. So yeah, ideally it'd be make some of these medications harder to get for people in the community, but then whatever. Better mental health support, people won't have to take Panadol overdoses. I don't know. But yeah, activated charcoal is definitely go for it.
Mum used to make us chew it when we had sore stomach in Eastern Europe.
Oh yeah, I've seen this. The guys, a lot of the Saffers that we work with in Somalia, they would have a big feed of oxtail. The next day they want to come in for charcoal, and they use that activated charcoal like antacids.
Oh no shit!
Apparently, yeah, they come in for charcoal the next day, chew it up little tablets. Presumably like what this person's saying. I guess it helps inactivate your stomach contents of the acid there. But apparently it can work like an antacid. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, whatever works, eh, man?
Yeah.
Even if it's a placebo, then they send it. I just want to give somebody else a shout out here as well. We've just got here from Anna, I'm assuming, because it's listed as Anna's Fuddy on the page here. BT Dubs, I make and sell Kawakawa Balm and others through my Facebook site. So everybody head across if you aren't already. Go across, follow Anna's Fuddy, and apparently she makes Kawakawa Balm. So that's very cool, and thank you for going through and sharing that with us, Anna. I'll have a look at it myself. Pretty useful stuff around the house, just in general. So epic stuff. Okay, so yeah, treated my 2-year-old's tummy with charcoal last week. Hey, team, we're pretty close to wrapping up there. If anybody's got anything quick fire, please send it through. Just as you're doing that, though, I just want to talk about something that we haven't mentioned at all in this entire kind of time, and that is, of course, just around the cardiac events and cardiac arrest. So, as you may or may not be aware of, obviously, essentially, the definitive thing about cardiac arrest is obviously good quality CPR, but ultimately it's about access to AEDs or going through and making sure that we get access and obviously get an AED or automated rather, external defibrillator onto the person's chest and press play on Pikachu, drop them a big shock into their chest, and obviously stop the heart so it can regain hopefully normal sinus rhythm pretty quick. The reality, though, is that AEDs have been incredibly cost prohibitive until just now. So you typically a really good or a mid-range AED will cost anywhere around about $2,000 to $2,500. Above and beyond that, we're looking, top range AEDs, pre-hospital ones, Life Pack CR2, for example, around about $4,000. These things are getting more and more expensive. There's a new game changer though, and this is a project that started over in Australia. I think it's joint between NZ and Aussie. I can't remember. We'll just claim it. They took Pavlova. I don't give a shit. I don't even like it anyway. So go through. This is an incredible device. The Cell AED. Steph's just put the product up on the chat group there. Go and have a look at it. This thing is no bigger than your average woman's clutch. All you have to do is snap it in half, place it on the person's chest, and it goes through. It is automatic. So there's no, it won't go through and prompt you to press a button. It's just going to send that shock. It is less than $500, less than $500, and it's tiny, absolutely minute comparison to everything else. Super safe, biphasic. The pad sends signals to the heart rather than just directly through. Obviously the chest. Super safe AED to go through and use. Yeah, so that's definitely something you can potentially look at there as well. So that pretty much wraps it up for tonight. Steph's just put a comment up there as well to register for potential private courses. Head through the web link we've got there, and for the FET course or pre-hospital emergency care course, or bulk pricing off medical items, go through and have a look. Remember, make sure that we're using proper legitimate equipment. There's nothing worse than going through and having training, education, such as kind of little chats like this, and then people going through and using the wrong shit and wondering why they're having terrible outcomes. So definitely get onto that. If anybody's got any other questions, maybe we can do one of these in the future again. But yeah, it's always good to kind of catch up with people in the flesh as well and go through and actually train hard, train well, to get good outcomes. Thank you guys so much for your time. I look at this as an investment of my time simply because we're going through and helping educate people around topics. So again, thank you to Shana. Thank you, Marty. Appreciate your time, Steve, tonight as well. And of course, a big thank you to the one who's actually behind the scenes, who is the true pulse of the business, no pun intended, to Steph. She's the one who really makes this work. Okay, so she's the glue within this fabric. Thank you guys so much. Take care out there. Steve, anything you want to finish with?
No, mate, just cheers to the crew. If it all hits the fan, I'll be coming to find you to help me out and help me survive. I'll provide meat care for you.
All right, guys. Hey, again, thank you so much. Absolutely amazing to have you on board. Take care out there. If you've got anything specific that you really want to know, don't hesitate us. DM us. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can, or whoever's managing social media, and we'll make sure you're looked after. But yeah, thank you again for your time. Appreciate you all, and just stay safe out there. Remember, trauma sleeps for no one. Semper paratus. Always ready.